Caitlin Clark got a little Kelsey Plum.
She was taking a not help, but to drag Caitlin through the glass.
Zero members of Team Clark were very present for that.
WNBA is on a hot finally.
What went down just moments ago has sent shockwaves through the entire WNBA. And somewhere, right now, Kelsey Plum is probably sick to her stomach because Caitlin Clark just dismantled her in the most cold-blooded, calculated way we've ever seen in women's basketball. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because this wasn't just payback. It was a blueprint for how to completely outplay and expose someone who tried to smear your name. And make no mistake, Plum didn't just lose, she got erased. Before we break down this absolute meltdown, hit that like button if you're riding with Caitlin all the way, because once you hear what really happened, there's no chance you'll still be backing Plum.
Sore losers, and you have sore winners. And Kelsey Plum.
Want to blow them out. We're a lot better.
Watching for the league, we're really watching for Caitlin Clark. Everyone's going to be making more because of
Caitlin Clark is the one bringing in the one.
Let's rewind to where this whole thing really kicked off. Because this wasn't some petty, random clash. This was rooted in envy, quiet sabotage, and one player's attempt to dull the shine of the biggest star the WNBA has ever produced. It started at the WNBA All-Star Game, an event that should have been about togetherness and celebrating women's basketball at its highest level. Instead, it spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable, jealousy-fueled moments the sport has seen. At the time, players were rallying behind the "Pay Us What You Owe Us" movement, pushing the league for better compensation. And honestly, that part is completely justified. These athletes deserve to be paid. But this is where Kelsey Plum revealed her hand and made what might end up being the worst calculated move of her career. During a press conference, with cameras flashing and the entire basketball world tuned in, Plum chose to take a thinly veiled shot at Caitlin Clark, all while avoiding the nerve to say her name outright.
But zero members of Team Clark were very present for that.
Or her actually making comments about Caitlin Clark's team not being at this meeting for the CBA.
She dropped this carefully worded line, claiming that none of the players on Team Clark were really involved, a clear jab aimed at the league's pay negotiations and player activism. The nerve of it was unreal. She zeroed in on the very player who's generated more buzz, revenue, and visibility for the WNBA than anyone in its 28-year existence, and tried to spin her as self-centered and disconnected from her peers. The move was so transparent, so deliberate, and frankly so foolish that even people who don't follow basketball could see exactly what she was doing. What makes it even more aggravating is the reality of the situation. Clark wasn't even at the All-Star Game. She was at home, recovering and handling her own circumstances. She had zero responsibility to show up for performative displays just to prove she supports player advocacy.
Caitlin Clark, during that whole thing about Team Clark wasn't very...
To me, I thought that was a little dig at Caitlin. A lot of people definitely thought...
she was taking a shot at Caitlin Clark's situation involving the "Pay Us What You..."
She's quite literally reshaped the entire women's basketball ecosystem, pulling in millions of new fans, elevating the sport's profile, and playing a major role in making the WNBA financially viable in a way it's never been before. And yet, Plum still had the audacity to question her dedication. The disrespect was off the charts, but what followed was even more satisfying. The backlash was instant and ruthless. Just look at Sabrina Ionescu's reaction during that press conference. The discomfort was written all over her face as the realization hit about what Plum had just set in motion. Even analyst Stacey King didn't sugarcoat it, pointing out how reckless it is to take shots at the league's golden ticket. And he wasn't wrong. The data tells the story. Since Caitlin Clark arrived, TV ratings have surged, merch is flying off shelves, ticket prices are climbing fast, and expansion fees have skyrocketed from $50 million to $250 million almost overnight. She's the league's strongest bargaining chip in salary talks, and Plum chose to publicly go after the WNBA's most valuable asset. But this is where Caitlin Clark showed she's more than just a lead on the court.
Say that Caitlin Clark didn't join in on the T-shirt discussion.
This week they wore T-shirts saying, making a statement, you better pay us. But instead of just leaving it at that, Kelsey Plum for LA had to take at Caitlin Clark. Here he is. Here she is.
The t-shirt, just United front was determined this morning that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present.
She's a calculated tactician, operating on a level most people can't even see, playing chess, while everyone else is stuck on checkers. Instead of clapping back with a sloppy press quote or diving into a social media feud, Clark made the ultimate power play. She said nothing. She let silence work for her. She kept winning headlines without even stepping on the court and waited patiently for the exact right moment to respond. And when that moment arrived, it hit like a wrecking ball. Not long after the controversy, Clark revealed a massive global deal with Nike, once again proving that major brands are lining up and competing just to be linked to her name. While Plum was focused on tearing her down, Clark was busy expanding her empire. But the finishing blow came when Clark noticed Plum posting pictures from a Nike event. Despite Plum being signed with Under Armour, Nike's direct rival, that's when Clark dropped the most perfectly timed, razor-sharp comment that sent the internet into a frenzy. Thanks for the Nike ad. Brands are lining up with open checkbooks, and she's pulling in well over 7 figures through endorsements alone. While some longtime players are still fighting to be seen, the corporate world understands what certain critics refuse to admit. Clark isn't just the future. She's the present, and she's the driving force behind why this sport is finally earning the respect and financial backing it's long deserved. Since that Instagram comment, Kelsey Plum has gone completely quiet, likely realizing she challenged someone who plays on an entirely different plane. The same player who tried to frame Clark as selfish and disengaged ended up getting outclassed by someone who understands that real influence doesn't need noise. It simply exists and lets outcomes do the talking. Clark's reach is so enormous that even a subtle social media remark becomes headline news, while Plum's attempts to stay relevant barely register. But this story is bigger than a personal clash between two athletes. What we're seeing is a broader effort by certain WNBA veterans to limit and manage Caitlin Clark's explosive rise, and it's failing in spectacular fashion. Before Clark arrived, the league was battling low viewership, scarce media attention, and expansion fees that paled in comparison to today's numbers. Games were often played in half-empty arenas, with little national buzz to speak of. The WNBA struggled with low sales, empty arenas, and zero profitability. Then everything shifted. Ratings surged, jerseys flew off shelves, ticket prices climbed, media deals ballooned, and expansion fees skyrocketed. Nearly every positive change in the league traces back to her impact. Yet, instead of embracing that growth, some veterans respond with thinly veiled jealousy and resistance. What they fail to grasp is simple. Clark's success lifts everyone. Higher viewership means higher pay, better resources, and real leverage for the league. She's the catalyst they've been fighting for. And through it all, Clark has shown why she's more than a great player. She's a leader who understands power, timing, and the long game. She doesn't chase drama. She turns criticism into momentum. Fans see it. The numbers prove it. And history is unfolding in real time.